Ron Howard, a profoundly cherished and lasting figure in American entertainment, is more than just a Hollywood luminary. He embodies artistry, benevolence, and the shared history of countless individuals. His very presence evokes a sense of national nostalgia. For millions, he will eternally be Opie Taylor from The Andy Griffith Show, the innocent child who blossomed under the warm embrace of early American television, and Richie Cunningham from Happy Days, the wholesome, red-haired son every family felt a connection to. Rising from humble working-class origins to achieve remarkable success far beyond acting, Ron became the creative force behind acclaimed films like Apollo 13 and A Beautiful Mind, redefining contemporary cinema with authenticity, compassion, and an unyielding dedication to narrative. However, few realize that beneath this celebrated exterior lies a life replete with hardship, profound disappointment, and personal struggles. Let us journey together through a life marked by significant achievements, yet shadowed by melancholy, and observe firsthand the intensity of the challenges he faced, particularly as he navigated his 71st year. Before we delve deeper, please express your appreciation for Ron Howard by leaving a heart in the comments and clicking the like button as a tribute to a man whose life, accomplishments, and spirit have deeply resonated with millions across generations. It is a somber realization how swiftly the glare of public attention can impact a life before one even has the chance to fully establish their own footing. Ronald William Howard entered this world on the first day of March 1954 in Duncan, Oklahoma. Yet from the very outset, the predictable rhythms of a conventional upbringing were already eluding his grasp. His parents, Rance and Jean, were aspiring actors who subsisted on unpredictable incomes. This was a modest household that often contained more optimism than material possessions. And even before Ron could articulate complete thoughts, the allure of the camera lens began to overshadow the simple childhood joys that should have characterized his formative years. By the time he was 18 months old, his existence was no longer measured by bedtime stories or giggles, but by production schedules and camera angles. The cameras were poised, the stage lights were set, and an industry eagerly seeking a fresh, innocent countenance was also in waiting. His initial steps were not taken on soft earth or verdant grass. They landed on the unyielding floorboards of a film set, beneath lights too intense for a young child to comprehend. When the Howard family relocated from Oklahoma to California in the mid-1950s, pursuing the burgeoning opportunities in television, their lives became inextricably linked to studio gates and the unpredictable nature of casting calls. Ron would later reflect, "I was exposed to adult complexities long before I could grasp them, and that was the stark, painful reality." His classrooms were confined trailers situated behind sound stages, where the gentle hum of arithmetic lessons was drowned out by the clatter of equipment being moved into position. The crew members smoked so heavily that a perpetual haze hung in the air, akin to a low-lying fog, irritating the eyes of the small, red-haired boy attempting to concentrate on his schoolwork. Men swore at overlooked cues, debated lighting setups, or erupted in boisterous laughter at jokes he couldn't comprehend. Some afternoons, the prop master would already be unsteady with drink before noon had even struck. Even the studio restroom, its walls adorned with crude, perplexing drawings, was a place his father had to awkwardly explain to him far too soon. These were the harsh realities life imposed upon him, lessons that no 6-year-old should be forced to internalize. By 1960, when he assumed the role of Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show, America had embraced him as its beloved on-screen son. However, behind that familiar smile lay a quiet sadness. California law mandated that he dedicate 3 hours daily to his studies. Yet the children he encountered on set were his colleagues, not his friends. Ron was learning multiplication while Grips shouted instructions across the studio. Cigarette smoke curled in the air, and Andy Griffith would strum his guitar to alleviate the heaviness of the days. There were no joyful recess bells, no lively baseball games awaiting him after school, no friends calling his name across a sun-drenched lawn. He later described it as a gilded cage, secure, undoubtedly, but ultimately confining. And when filming concluded and the audience's applause subsided, the solitude persisted, trailing him home like an inescapable shadow. Beyond the confines of the studio, the world inflicted its own brand of pain. Children twisted the name Opie into rhymes like dopey, mopey, and soapy, barbs that stung more acutely than any scripted criticism. He started avoiding the school lavatory after enduring numerous cruel jokes. And one day, overcome by terror and unable to bear another taunt, he lost control and urinated himself in public. The profound humiliation became indelibly etched into his memory. At the tender age of 8, while filming The Music Man, he experienced a moment of panic during a dance sequence, whispering to Shirley Jones, "I can't do it." He trembled at the prospect of disappointing adults whose approval felt as essential as breathing. Yet somehow, despite the fear, the isolation, and the pervasive shadows, he persevered. Every hurt, every solitary lunch eaten behind stage 40, every cruel rhyme directed at him forged a resilience that would eventually anchor him through both triumphs and adversities. Even in the silent suffering that remained unseen by others, Ron Howard was mastering the art of navigating a life that had chosen him long before he had the agency to make his own selections. However, the intensity of the spotlight seemed to tighten its hold as he matured, shaping him in ways far more intricate than he could have ever envisioned. By the age of 6, his face was already familiar to America. By 13, the persona of Opie Taylor had become so ingrained that it felt less like affection and more like an inescapable constraint he didn't know how to dismantle. While fame offered a semblance of security through steady employment and a reliable income, it subtly eroded the life he might have otherwise experienced. "I didn't know who I was apart from that character," he would confess years later, his candid self-assessment revealing the profound depth to which the role had become interwoven with his very identity. What the public cherished, he privately feared he could never outgrow. While boys his age were experimenting with new hairstyles and navigating the awkwardness of their first romantic interests, Ron faced an industry that insisted he remain frozen in time. Casting directors greeted him warmly, only to politely dismiss him, deeming him too recognizable or too OP, making him unsuitable for other roles. A producer delivered a pronouncement that followed him like a chilling echo. America won't let go of that boy. Though intended as a compliment, Ron felt its weight settle upon him like an ill-fitting garment that grew increasingly constricting as he attempted to mature. He observed others stumble, reinvent themselves, and make mistakes, rites of passage he could only witness from a distance. The world had predetermined his trajectory long before he had the opportunity to chart his own course. At the age of 13, he found a glimmer of hope with the series The Monroes, a chance to depart from the innocent world of Mayberry and embrace a different kind of narrative. However, when the show was abruptly cancelled after a mere 26 episodes, the impact was more profound than the mere termination of employment. Ron blamed himself, his performance, his tone, even his demeanor on set. "I believed I had let everyone down," he later recalled, remembering how the ensuing silence felt like a chilling winter settling within him. It was not merely a cancellation, it felt like a definitive judgment. He feared that Hollywood had concluded he had reached his zenith before he had even grasped the concept of a peak. That quiet devastation marked the first instance he questioned whether the industry that had claimed him so early would ever permit him to evolve. And then, at 19, came Happy Days, an opportunity that should have liberated him from his insecurities, yet instead reopened wounds he hadn't realized were still festering. In the role of Richie Cunningham, he performed with dedication, but as fame increasingly gravitated toward Fonzie's character, Ron was left to contend with questions no young actor should be expected to answer. Did it sting to be the secondary figure in your own program? Executives often overlooked him. Networks underestimated his potential, and each slight left a subtle, stinging abrasion on his self-confidence. Hollywood adored him, but only in a singular mold. Still, he refused to be broken. Every closed door fueled his determination. Every condescending smile intensified the resolve burning within him. He filled notebooks with his creative ideas, meticulously studied the work of directors with a quiet intensity, and waged a personal battle between the public image imposed upon him and the artist he knew he could become. During those years of rejection, self-doubt, and unspoken struggles, something extraordinary began to germinate: the emergence of the filmmaker who would eventually step out from every shadow, not by disavowing his past, but by daring to redefine his future. True greatness rarely arrives with gentle fanfare. It crashes into a life like an unrelenting tempest, stripping away comfort long before offering any reward. And when Ron Howard stepped behind the camera in the early 1980s, he discovered that directing was not a sanctuary, but a more formidable arena where every misstep incurred a deeper sting, and every doubt echoed with greater intensity. His transformation began with Night Shift in 1982, a modest endeavor that many had already deemed a lost cause. Ron labored through countless nights filled with the aroma of stale coffee and frayed nerves, poring over shot lists as late as 3 a.m, as if each frame were a lifeline, preventing him from succumbing once more to the shadow of Opie Taylor. "I felt as though everything hinged on it," he later admitted. When the film garnered over $21 million at the box office, he didn't celebrate. He simply exhaled, his body trembling. It wasn't triumph, it was survival, and that survival gradually solidified into an unwavering resolve as he moved on to Splash in 1984, a film that Hollywood initially dismissed as childish fantasy. Ron perceived what the cynics could not: the delicate humanity underlying its whimsical premise. He witnessed Daryl Hannah shivering within a 35-pound silicone tail, battled against Disney's reservations, and pressed forward through a barrage of smirks and skepticism. When Splash soared to nearly $70 million, Ron wasn't merely validating himself, he was etching a new identity into the annals of Hollywood. 1 year later, he embarked on an audacious undertaking, establishing a production company. Imagine Entertainment, co-founded with Brian Grazer in 1985, began as an ambitious vision and swiftly evolved into a formidable entity, demanding immense dedication, exceptional talent, and many years of Ron's life. By the late 1990s, Imagine employed hundreds of individuals, developed numerous projects, and quietly influenced the very pulse of American television and film. Yet behind the gleaming glass doors resided a man who seldom slept. Ron bore the weight of responsibility as if it were a tangible burden, sharp, oppressive, and unrelenting. Every approved script felt like a solemn pledge he alone was obligated to uphold. Every box office disappointment felt like a dagger aimed directly at his heart. "If one piece falters, they all fall," he once confided. While public acclaim came easily, the personal cost never did. In the quiet hours after the offices had emptied and the machinery had fallen silent, Ron grappled with a pressure that no one else could fully comprehend, the pervasive fear that a single erroneous decision could unravel everything he had painstakingly constructed. These anxieties reached a fever pitch as he confronted the most arduous challenge of his career. Apollo 13 in 1995. Determined to portray the events with absolute authenticity rather than a Hollywood interpretation, Ron insisted on zero-gravity realism aboard NASA's infamous Vomit Comet. Through successive, disorienting dives, he maintained his composure amidst nausea, vertigo, and the throbbing headache induced by parabolic flight. Following 14-hour rehearsal days, he meticulously analyzed NASA transcripts until the words blurred, only to awaken before dawn to review simulations. For 90 days, he sustained himself on a combination of sheer exhaustion, adrenaline, and the profound terror of not achieving perfection. At one critical juncture, under the intense heat of the studio lights, his vision narrowed to a tunnel. The room seemed to spin, voices distorted, and Ron collapsed. Production came to an immediate halt, with crew members rushing to his side. For 36 hours, filming ceased as the man who held the entire production together lay drained, pale, and unnervingly still. Upon his return, the crew greeted him with T-shirts emblazoned with Mission Control, a silent testament to their commitment to matching his unwavering dedication. The film achieved a remarkable box office gross of $355 million and garnered 9 Academy Award nominations. However, the true victory transcended any monetary figure. Ron had endured a crucible that nearly shattered him. Then came A Beautiful Mind in 2001, a psychological, intricate tapestry that preyed upon him from within. To authentically convey John Nash's mental unraveling, Ron filmed the narrative in near chronological order, deliberately withholding visual cues for hallucinations, thus immersing the audience inescapably into Nash's disoriented perception. Even before the film's premiere, historians and mathematicians alike scrutinized and critiqued his artistic choices. The pressure constricted Ron's chest like a tightening vice. He bore it silently, his jaw clenched, his shoulders tense, exhaustion seeping into his very bones. "I simply hoped I was honoring the truth that lay beneath the facts," he would later state. When the film garnered 4 Academy Awards, including Best Director, and exceeded $313 million in revenue, Ron reached a pinnacle few ever attain. Yet even as applause thundered through the auditorium, he felt the unseen toll. The nights he sacrificed sleep, the meals he skipped, the precious moments with his family that were lost forever. Each cinematic masterpiece had subtly, persistently, and irrevocably claimed a piece of him. However, these sacrifices were not perceived as wounds. They constituted the very architecture of his enduring legacy. Greatness had not been bestowed upon him. It had been painstakingly, arduously, and beautifully carved from a lifetime of navigating life's tempests. Some storms do not announce themselves with thunder. They strike unexpectedly, tightening their hold before you even sense the ground fracturing beneath your feet. And for Ron Howard, who by his mid-40s had experienced successes that most filmmakers strive for their entire careers, the unsettling realization crept in like a chilling draft. In Hollywood, regardless of how high you ascend, you never stand on truly solid ground. You are, in essence, on ice, thin, fragile, and precarious. And when that ice finally breaks, it does not shatter with a roar. It exhales softly and engulfs you. The initial fracture appeared in 1999 when Ron was 45 years old. EDtv possessed every ingredient for success. It was intelligent, sharp, and remarkably ahead of its time. Instead, he found himself alone in a dimly lit office at Imagine, observing the nascent box office figures flicker across a monitor, much like a slow, damning verdict. With each update, the room seemed to constrict around him. The fluorescent hum felt oppressively harsh. The silence on the telephone lines felt unforgiving. Nearly $30 million did not vanish in a dramatic decline. It slowly seeped away in a cold, relentless drip. And with each drop, something within the industry perceptibly shifted. Executives who had once spoken his name with unwavering certainty now employed deliberate pauses and measured tones, a subtle condescension that stung more profoundly than outright criticism ever could. Ron never faltered, never shifted blame. That was not his nature. However, those closest to him observed the subtle fissures beneath his composed demeanor, the long, drawn-out exhale before he spoke, the way his gaze fixated on a single knot in the floorboards, as if bracing against an invisible current. EDtv was not merely a box office disappointment. It represented a moment when success did not simply recede, but stepped back, exposing him to the sharp, unmistakable chill of Hollywood's apathy. And within that quiet, frigid space, Ron experienced a sensation he hadn't felt since his childhood. The stark reminder that even legends can find themselves standing utterly alone. Nearly a decade later, the sting of that experience had not faded. It had returned, sharpened, as if the wound inflicted by EDtv had merely been the initial incision. Frost Nixon in 2008 was a project into which a filmmaker pours their entire soul, disciplined, insightful, and executed with surgical brilliance. Critics lauded it, awards recognized its merit, yet when the final ticket sales were tallied, the numbers painted a colder reality. With a production budget hovering between $25 and $30 million and a global gross of only approximately $28.5 million, the film barely recouped its expenses. Some categorized it as a minor loss, others as a financial stalemate, but none of these labels eased the sting. For Ron, it felt like a fresh bruise forming directly atop an older one, prestige on one side, disappointment on the other. Sometimes the films that cost you the most are the ones you are most proud of, he admitted quietly. But pride could not conceal the emerging pattern. EDtv had faltered. Frost Nixon had stumbled. Two financial missteps, separated by nearly 10 years, were no longer isolated incidents. They were tremors, suggesting that the ground beneath him was once again shifting. And Ron could sense it. Then came the blow that did not merely shake him, it fractured the very core of everything he had meticulously built. Solo, a Star Wars story in 2018. Ron was 64 years old when he stepped into a production already teetering on the brink of collapse. Scripts remained unfinished, tonal inconsistencies abounded, and a fan base renowned for dissecting every subtle nuance of every frame loomed large. It was not merely a job, it was a battlefield thrust upon his shoulders amidst an ongoing explosion. And Ron, ever the disciplined professional, did not flinch. He reshot nearly 70% of the film, pushing through nights so prolonged that they obliterated the distinction between work and sheer willpower. Hope began to blur. Exhaustion intensified, but he pressed onward because that was his inherent nature. And then the film was released, met with a verdict so swift and unforgiving that it felt as though the floor had vanished from beneath him. Headlines transformed into sharp blades. Analysts meticulously dismantled the film piece by piece. Solo hemorrhaged an estimated $50 to $80 million, the most devastating financial collapse of Ron's entire career. And this time, it wasn't solely about the numbers, it was a public spectacle, loud and utterly merciless. For the first time in over 5 decades of consistent, honorable work, Ron admitted that he seriously contemplated abandoning directing altogether. Imagine the immense weight of that moment. The man who had navigated the treacherous waters of childhood fame, industry shifts and relentless expectations, suddenly questioning whether the world still desired his artistic voice. This was not a mere professional setback. It was a direct assault on his identity, a fracture in his fundamental belief that diligent effort, unwavering discipline, and integrity were sufficient to weather any storm. Solo did not just falter at the box office. It struck at the very foundation of a life patiently, honorably, and relentlessly constructed. And for a brief period, it compelled him to question everything. However, the most arduous test still lay ahead, not one of explosive drama but of devastating quietude, carrying the weight of truth that only unspoken realities can impart. In 2025, at the age of 71, Ron poured his creative energy into Eden, a film born from years of burgeoning curiosity, unwavering courage, and the persistent conviction that stories still held profound significance. He championed this project with a singular brand of faith that only a lifelong storyteller can summon. Yet he found himself once again in the dim glow of an editing suite, observing the opening weekend figures materialize on the screen like a cold, definitive judgment. $1 million. By the conclusion of its theatrical run, Eden had garnered a mere $248 million against a production budget of $55 million, resulting in a loss exceeding $45 million. But the true source of his pain was not the financial deficit. It was the profound realization that after surviving decades of tumultuous challenges, he was still being profoundly impacted. Eden was intended to be a radiant dawn in his later years. Instead, it felt like an early twilight, a stark reminder that time offers no guarantees, no allowances, and no special exemptions, not even for esteemed legends. Yet it is precisely at this juncture that Ron Howard transcends mere success, becoming something far more rare. He becomes enduring. None of these failures marked his end. They bent him, they pressed him, they etched their indelible marks across the narrative of his life, undoubtedly, but they could not extinguish the fire within him. This is because behind every setback stood the same quiet resilience that once carried a red-haired boy from Maybury through the immense pressures of fame, the expectations of adulthood, and the continuous reinventions demanded by a demanding industry. Eden did not break him, it revealed him. It demonstrated that a legacy is not solely forged by the victories that elicit public acclaim, but by the courage a man displays when the world ceases its applause. And so he rose, not with dramatic flair, not with defiant confrontation, but with a steady, determined gait, the way only a man who comprehends the value of purpose above praise can ascend. Every disappointment became a significant chapter, every bruise a sharpening experience, every fall a profound lesson in grace. Within Ron's remarkable journey lies a truth that is far too often overlooked. The true measure of a life is not determined by the number of times you triumph, but by the number of times you persevere after experiencing defeat, and crucially, by the person you choose to become in the aftermath. For in the final analysis, greatness is never shaped by the storms a man manages to avoid, but by the storms he resolutely continues to navigate, particularly when the world quietly presumes he will falter. After navigating the turbulence of financial setbacks and widespread public skepticism, an older, more deeply etched wound resurfaced, one that had been inflicted long before Hollywood ever acknowledged his name. It was the piercing sting of a spotlight that had once lashed out so violently that it seemed to steal the very air from his lungs, a wound that the public had misread for decades. Not born of betrayal nor born of rivalry, but forged in the relentless crucible of stardom and forever linked to the man the public insisted on comparing him to, Henry Winkler. When Happy Days first graced the airwaves in 1974, 19-year-old Ron Howard was its anchor, the kindly, ginger-haired soul that America embraced. Hollywood positioned him as the show's dependable son. However, by 1975, the dynamic shifted. Fonzie entered the picture. Henry Winkler's leather-clad charisma exploded onto the scene, and the audience erupted. Fan correspondence tripled, merchandise sold out, magazine covers clamored for Fonzie, not Richie. Producers discreetly suggested extending Henry's screen time. Network executives adjusted their schedules around his availability, and Ron, barely old enough to legally purchase alcoholic beverages, felt his secure position waver. During a 1976 promotional tour under intense stage lights, a journalist leaned in and posed the question, "How does it feel to be in second place on your own program?" Ron offered a smile, yet his fingers tightened around the armrest of his chair. It was a subtle gesture, perhaps missed by the cameras, but far from imperceptible to his heart. He would later articulate the feeling, stating, "It was like a blow you see coming far too late." The spotlight hadn't merely drifted, it had abruptly veered away, leaving him blinking in the fading radiance of a world that no longer reflected his image. Yet the underlying truth, the one frequently misunderstood, was this: Ron's anguish was never directed at Henry. Henry Winkler never boasted, never demanded a greater share of the spotlight, and never allowed ambition to overshadow his innate kindness. He approached the set with humility, rehearsed with generosity, and regarded Ron not as a competitor, but as a comrade. Ron's distress stemmed from the industry itself, the studios, the sensationalized headlines, the very machinery of show business that possesses the power to redefine a young individual's identity without seeking consent. "I felt disregarded not by Henry, but by the business itself," Ron confessed years later, a confession carrying the weight of decades of unspoken sorrow. For while losing prominence is one challenge, feeling supplanted within one's own narrative is an entirely different ordeal. It infiltrates deeply, lingers persistently, and resurfaces when least anticipated. Nevertheless, herein lies the remarkable aspect of their shared history. While the public speculated about animosity, Ron and Henry cultivated a bond that the industry couldn't tarnish: unwavering, resolute loyalty. Henry became the godfather to all four of Ron's children, a testament to a friendship founded on mutual trust, not friction. On set, Henry would advocate for Ron when executives became preoccupied with ratings. Off-set, he would remind Ron that compassion endures longer than celebrity. And when Ron decided to depart from acting to pursue the uncertain ambition of directing, Henry offered his full, unwavering support. Then came a pivotal moment that cemented their enduring connection. In 2002, moments after Ron accepted the Academy Award for his work on A Beautiful Mind, Henry stood just beyond the stage, wiping away tears. "He earned every bit of this," Henry whispered. As Ron stepped into the dazzling lights of the Dolby Theatre, he glanced back, and the profound pride reflected in Henry's eyes conveyed that the last vestiges of that old hurt had finally been healed. Their narrative, so frequently reduced to mere gossip, was never about a struggle for superiority. It was a story of resilience, of two young men navigating the unpredictable ferocity of the spotlight, consciously choosing magnanimity over ego, allegiance over apprehension, and truth over conjecture. And for anyone who has ever felt overshadowed, overlooked, or marginalized, their journey imparts a quiet, lasting lesson. While the world may designate a favored individual, the heart ultimately selects its kin. In the grand scheme, Ron Howard discerned a truth far more profound than mere accolades or viewership numbers. True greatness is not the legacy one constructs, but rather the cherished relationships one steadfastly preserves. It is a poignant paradox that an individual can weather the most intense adversities of Hollywood, only to be profoundly affected by the silent anguish emanating from within their own home. In the context of a protracted marriage, a single period of silence can resonate far more powerfully than any heated disagreement, creating a chasm between two individuals who once held each other without reservation. Ron Howard learned this not on bustling film sets, but in the hushed solitude of his living room, a sanctuary where applause could not penetrate and professional triumphs could not assuage the inner ache. Despite numerous accolades and decades spent under the glare of bright lights, nothing impacted him as deeply as the profound stillness that descended when love itself was suffering. Yet, neither of them possessed the language to articulate their distress. His marriage, a union spanning over 50 years, began not as a trial by fire, but as a steadfast conviction that their love would suffice, that their inherent gentleness would somehow shield them. They never envisioned the myriad occasions on which this conviction would be tested, strained, and painstakingly mended. Prior to the emergence of shadows, there were years of golden warmth, tender intimacy, glowing with the soft luminescence of film left to sunbathe. Ron was 21 and Cheryl 22, newlywed and surrounded by hand-me-downs and a hope so potent it could soften any hardship. Their modest Los Angeles apartment carried the distinct aroma of slightly burnt toast and Cheryl's ink-stained notebooks, the scent of two dreamers meticulously constructing a future with little more than their mutual affection. Their finances were meager, but their joy was boundless. When Bryce arrived in 1981, Ron wept into Cheryl's hair, exclaiming, "We did it." The twins followed in 1985, and then Reed in 1987, ushering in years filled with diapers and pressing deadlines, the soft melodies of lullabies sung over stacks of scripts, and countless nights when Ron would rush home simply to witness his children in their peaceful slumber. "We were broke, but we were complete," Cheryl recalled, her voice still imbued with the warmth of those formative years. However, life possesses a formidable ability to test even the most resilient structures. In 1991, following 6 arduous months of filming far and away in Ireland, Ron returned home, having missed birthdays, school performances, and an innumerable quantity of small, precious moments that should have been his. Upon finally opening the door, eager to embrace his daughter, she hesitated, her gaze studying him as if he were a polite stranger. "She didn't recognize me," Ron recounted, his voice tinged with the memory, "and something within me fractured." He was 37, yet that single moment seemed to age him considerably. Meanwhile, Cheryl had been submerged under a deluge of responsibilities that garnered no public recognition. 4 children, endless nights spent alone, and the gnawing fear that Hollywood was incrementally pilfering her husband, one day at a time. "I felt abandoned by a life I believed we were building together," she admitted candidly. Their exchanges began to acquire a sharp edge, and a pervasive heaviness settled over their conversations. They weren't engaged in outright arguments. Rather, they were slowly unraveling. There are periods within a marriage where life doesn't break you with a single catastrophic event, but rather with a rapid succession of blows that coalesce into a prolonged, persistent ache. For Ron and Cheryl, these blows manifested as mounting financial anxieties, a string of films that faltered at the box office, and losses amounting to tens of millions of dollars which settled like an oppressive, silent burden upon their dinner table. Ron continued to enter their home with his characteristic smile, but Cheryl sensed the palpable weight behind it the moment he exhaled. Oh, the quiet confession. He was unable to articulate it. The world perceived a celebrated director. She observed the man seated at the edge of their bed at midnight, his shoulders slumped beneath the burden of numbers too painful to disclose. $20 million vanished here, $30 million there. One season proved so bleak it felt akin to standing precariously at the precipice of a cliff. Within the confines of their home, these staggering figures existed not on spreadsheets, but in the way Ron would rub his forehead over a cooling cup of coffee, pace the hallway after the children were asleep, or swallow his words before the gnawing fear could escape his lips. Some nights Cheryl would awaken to the sound of his defeated sighs, each one carrying a monetary figure he could not bring himself to utter. "What if I'm failing you?" he once whispered. She took his trembling hand. "You could lose every possession we own," she stated softly, "and you would still have me." As disappointment after disappointment mounted, with project after project stumbling, the strain transmuted into something more profound. It wasn't solely the financial losses, it was the erosion of certainty. Ron began to withdraw into himself, safeguarding the figures as if they were a secret too sharp to be shared. Cheryl discerned the tremor in his hands when he answered the telephone, the distant look in his eyes after meetings, the untouched plate of food before him. These were not merely indicators of financial setbacks, they were signs of a man losing faith in his own capabilities. And although they still shared laughter and embraced each other, an unspoken apprehension wove itself between them. The question loomed, what if this is the challenge from which we cannot recover? The breaking point arrived one evening when Ron entered the house, bearing the news of yet another devastating loss, another multi-million-dollar failure etched across the profound exhaustion on his face. Cheryl found him seated in the dimness, unopened reports resting on his lap. "I fear I am subjecting us to circumstances you never desired," he murmured. She sat beside him, a steady presence where he trembled. "I did not marry the storms," she said gently. "I married you." And in that dimly lit room, a subtle transformation occurred. It wasn't the numbers that shifted, but rather the fundamental truth that had sustained them for over 50 years. They were still consciously choosing each other. From that evening forward, the setbacks did not cease, but they no longer served to drive them apart. Ron commenced sharing the financial figures, not with the intention of burdening Cheryl, but to liberate himself from carrying the weight alone. She, in turn, confided her own deepest fears, not of financial ruin, but of losing him to the relentless pressures and expectations of his profession. Consequently, they navigated these losses collaboratively, rather than encircling them in a shroud of silence. Gradually, challenges that had once pushed them into opposing corners began to draw them closer, as if the only viable strategy for enduring the immense pressure was to share it. Their conversations deepened, their silences softened, and their hands sought each other more readily in the darkness. Somewhere amidst the bruising financial figures and the unsteady nights, they rediscovered the enduring truth that had sustained them for over 5 decades. Love is not measured by what life permits you to retain, but by the extent to which two individuals resolutely refuse to allow it to steal what they cherish. Yet, through it all, the absences, the bruised pride, the financial blows that threatened to unbalance them, they consistently found their way back to one another. When Ron collapsed from sheer exhaustion on the set of Apollo 13 in 1995, Cheryl held his hand in the hospital, whispering, "I don't care about the film. I care about you." And when Cheryl later experienced the profound loneliness of raising 4 children while Ron pursued demanding deadlines and fantastical dreamscapes, he began making overnight flights simply to tuck the children into bed, arriving at dawn bearing the exhaustion of a man desperately attempting to recapture moments slipping through his grasp. As their children matured, they came to recognize the true essence of their parents' love, not in grand pronouncements, but in resilience, compassion, forgiveness, and the unwavering determination to reunite, even when circumstances sought to drive them apart. Over 50 years, more than 50 seasons of transformation, fracture, repair, and repeated choices to stand together. Theirs was never an idealized marriage, but one held together by the courage to remain committed when departing would have been the easier path. It was shaped by whispered apologies, late-night conversations at the kitchen table, and the quiet resolve to begin anew each day that had nearly overwhelmed them. Even in their later years, life presented them with another trial. Another project collapsed, millions were lost, serving as yet another stark reminder that the passage of time does not immunize love from hardship. When Ron brought home the painful reality, Cheryl perceived the familiar ache in his posture. She gently touched his arm and simply stated, "We've faced this before and we are still us." Her steadfastness did not negate the loss, but it softened its impact, transforming what could have been another rupture into a moment of profound connection. If their narrative offers any insight, it is a truth learned through lived experience, not through pronouncements. Love endures, and because life is inherently benevolent, but because two individuals resolutely refuse to permit adversity to dictate the outcome. And when Ron gazes at Cheryl now, her hair silver, her eyes gentle, decades of laughter and worry etched softly upon her face, he no longer sees the young woman he married. He sees the woman who bore him through every failure, every regret, every moment of self-doubt, the woman who remained, the woman who steadied him when he was incapable of standing on his own, the woman who transformed over 50 years into a single, unwavering demonstration of grace. There arrive moments in life when an individual must confront the most arduous and devastating decision imaginable, drawing a definitive boundary, even with a beloved sibling, to prevent them from succumbing further. For Ron Howard, this critical juncture did not arise from the machinations of Hollywood, the pronouncements of critics, or the unforgiving machinery of fame. It emerged from his own home, from the bonds of blood, from the brother who once walked beside him through studio corridors as if the world itself were unfolding solely for them. Clint had never been characterized by recklessness or wildness. He possessed a thoughtful, observant nature, the kind of individual whose quiet demeanor instilled a sense of ease in those around him. However, adulthood can present unexpected challenges even to the most gentle souls. By the late 1980s and into the 1990s, Clint began making choices that carried significant and painful repercussions. Cocaine, alcohol, and a pattern of self-destructive behavior slowly estranged him from the life he had diligently striven to build. These were not mere unfortunate accidents. They were deliberate decisions that created fissures he could no longer conceal, fractures that Ron observed widening with each subsequent encounter. Ron never condoned those choices. What truly tormented him was not mere sympathy, but the profound helplessness of witnessing someone he deeply loved inching closer to a precipice from which there might be no return. Clint's inherent vibrancy began to dim. Mornings blurred into nights. Apologies were offered in fragmented recollections he could barely recall. Addiction operates without negotiation. It infiltrates the quiet hours, steals clarity, and transforms families into unwilling witnesses of a struggle they cannot undertake on another's behalf. Some evenings, Clint would call, his speech slurred, expressing shame for words he did not recognize as his own. Some mornings, Ron would drive across town only to find a hollowed-out version of the man he had known his entire life, shoulders slumped, eyes unfocused, as if the world had been drained of all its color. Still, Ron loved him, a dread settling in his chest, a knot tightening in his throat, accompanied by the silent terror that time was slipping through his fingers faster than he could possibly reach for his brother. The breaking point arrived on a night that Ron would revisit in his mind for decades. Clint had descended so profoundly that his fear warped his voice beyond recognition. His breathing was uneven, his words fractured, and sheer panic bled through every passing second. And Ron, acclaimed, respected, and admired, felt suddenly diminished, powerless, stripped bare of any illusion that success could somehow shield the people he cherished. On that particular night, he comprehended that love sometimes necessitates something more potent than mere comfort. It demands truth, and it demands boundaries. He drove to Clint's residence, sat across from him in a room illuminated by a single, weary lamp, and uttered words that felt as if he were tearing open his own chest. "Go to rehab, or I lose you." It was not an expression of anger, nor was it a form of punishment. It was the final desperate plea for hope from a brother who had exhausted all gentler avenues for his salvation. Clint looked up, his eyes bloodshot, his hands unsteady, and whispered a single word that carried the weight of years of exhaustion and surrender. "Okay." The process of recovery was neither clean nor linear, but it was undeniably real, and gradually, painfully, Ron began to perceive faint glimmers of the Clint he had feared he had lost forever. A laugh that once again reached his eyes, a returning steadiness in his voice, a presence that felt whole rather than fractured. Years later, when they collaborated on The Boys, Clint candidly recounted his darkest chapters, not to offer excuses, but to acknowledge the unwavering support of the family who stood between him and the edge. Ron wrote of him with the profound tenderness of a man who had persevered through storms capable of shattering them both. Their narrative is not a testament to perfection. It is a profound demonstration of resilience, of compassion that surpasses fear, and of the undeniable truth that addiction is not a reflection of a flawed character, but rather a battle that demands every ounce of courage an individual can muster. And battles are never won in isolation. When Ron looks at Clint now, older, more composed, softened by years he nearly didn't live to witness, he no longer sees the chaos of the past. He sees the immense courage it took to surmount it. He sees the brother he never ceased to love. He sees a life. And most significantly, he sees irrefutable proof that even within the darkest of chapters, family remains the hand that reaches into the inferno and guides you home. And just as Ron had navigated his way through one formidable storm, another arose from a place he could not possibly safeguard, his own foundational support system. Saving a brother represents one profound heartbreak. However, nothing truly prepares an individual for the loss of the very people who established the ground upon which they stand. His mother, Jean, had always embodied the quiet gravitational center of his world. She was warm, steady, and possessed an unending wellspring of patience. She was the gentle presence behind the curtain at his school plays, the soothing voice that reminded him to breathe before auditions, the anchor who remained resolutely firm even when his life spun at a pace he found difficult to comprehend. Yet, in her later years, subtle imperfections began to emerge, moments so fleeting that he attempted to dismiss them. A slight breathlessness after ascending a single flight of stairs, a hand pressed subtly to her chest. A smile that lingered a fraction too long, masking underlying discomfort. She insisted it was inconsequential, attributing it to the natural process of aging, waving him away with a light-hearted laugh. However, age was not the primary culprit. Her heart was gradually failing, struggling with increasing difficulty with each passing month. And when complications stemming from congestive heart failure ultimately necessitated her hospitalization in the year 2000, Ron entered the sterile room with a profound sense of dread that settles low and cold in the pit of one's stomach. Machines hummed, monitors flickered, and there she lay. The woman who had once rushed him through downpours, wrapping him protectively in her coat, who had whispered words of encouragement when he doubted his own abilities, who had celebrated every single victory as if it were her own. Ron took her hand, now noticeably thinner, lighter, possessing a fragility he had never before experienced. He spoke softly, apprehensive that his voice might disturb her rest. She departed with the same gentleness as someone who wished to avoid burdening anyone, even in her final moments. And as her hand grew still in his, a silence descended around him so immense that it felt as though the very room had imploded. Her absence struck with a force that no award, no professional milestone, no public applause could possibly mitigate. The world seemed to dim at its periphery, as if the light she had radiated had departed with her. Premieres felt subdued, scripts became blurred. Even his own achievements seemed to echo within him, devoid of any discernible purpose. He found himself replaying cherished memories with the vividness of vintage film, her soft humming as she brushed his hair before a scene, her arms encircling him after his earliest television appearances, her laughter cascading down the hallway like a warm, benevolent tide. He recalled the profound way she looked at him, not as an actor, not as a burgeoning star, but simply as her son. Losing her felt akin to losing the very blueprint of his identity, as if the compass that had quietly guided him throughout his entire existence had abruptly vanished. And in the profound quietude of those days following her passing, Ron arrived at a truth that etched itself deeply into his heart. Certain storms do not announce themselves with thunderous roars. They simply take, leaving behind an emptiness that no spotlight can ever illuminate. And before that initial wound could even begin to form a scar, life shifted once more, subtly, cruelly, without any forewarning. His father, Rance, once the steadfast bedrock of their family, began to falter. Initially, these changes were not dramatic, nothing that would capture anyone's attention unless they were intimately connected to him. A tremor in his fingers as he reached for a glass, a brief pause in the middle of a sentence. a momentary flicker of confusion that crossed his face like a fleeting shadow. Then came the stark reality, a truth that offered no solace. No family is ever truly prepared for heart disease, advancing age, and a gradual cognitive decline that would gently unravel the mind of the man who had instilled in Ron everything pertaining to truth, discipline, and decency. It was not a sudden collapse, but rather a prolonged, agonizing unspooling. Days contracted into half-days dwindled into whispered hours, and moments of recognition flickered in and out like a light bulb struggling to remain illuminated. Ron visited him constantly, not as a filmmaker juggling demanding schedules, nor as a public figure expected to maintain an unwavering composure, but as a son who could feel the relentless march of time slipping through his fingers. He sat beside him in rooms that felt excessively silent, observing the man who had once stood tall on every set begin to stoop with frailty. And as he watched, memories surged unbidden. Rance, standing just outside the camera's frame during the Andy Griffith show, silently mouthing Ron's lines along with him. Rance squeezing his shoulder before each significant moment, a presence as steady as bedrock. Rance teaching him how to enter a scene with authenticity and how to depart with grace. Now Ron sat in that same room, tracing the delicate veins on his father's hand, the hand that had once lifted him onto sound stages, guided him through fear, and fundamentally shaped the man he had become. When Rance finally passed away in 2017, following a prolonged period of decline and complications related to heart failure, something within Ron did not shatter. It simply vanished. A silent dissolution, profound and complete. The kind of sorrow that doesn't cry out, but empties a space of its breath. He departed the medical facility walking a touch slower, as if the very pull of the earth had altered. It was more than just the passing of a parent. It was the loss of the final person who had known him before the world did, the last voice that could utter his name as son and make him feel that cherished identity. In the brief span of just a few fleeting years, Ron had rescued his brother from the brink, only to be bereft of the two beings who formed the foundation of his existence. For a period, everything around him felt alien, as though the world had remained unchanged, yet had been stripped of its underlying essence. He navigated rooms that seemed less luminous, through days that felt unbearably hushed, through triumphs that suddenly appeared diminished. Even joyful sounds adopted a different cadence, more muted, tinged with an ache. But within that vacated emptiness, a new force began to emerge. His parents had bequeathed him more than just recollections. They had gifted him a moral compass, a manner of carrying himself in the world with uprightness, perseverance, modesty, and compassion. Embracing that heritage felt akin to grasping a navigational tool that would never falter. And as Ron stood in the quiet aftermath of all he had relinquished, he grasped a truth he would cherish for the remainder of his days. Adversity never ceases its approach. However, neither does affection, and even amidst the most intense bereavement, when foundations are shattered, when a room is too still, when the world feels overwhelmingly delicate, a life sculpted by benevolence can still endure, because the hands that nurtured you never truly release their hold. Grief possesses a heartless cadence. It seldom allows a spirit to recover before striking anew. Ron had barely begun to regain his equilibrium after the demise of both his parents when another misfortune befell him, sharp and unforeseen, from a source he never imagined he would have to grieve. The shared history he possessed with Cindy Williams. Her passing in the year 2023 did not merely astonish him. It left him so utterly dumbfounded, the very ground seemed to shift beneath him. Because Cindy was not merely a fellow performer, not simply a name emblazoned on the poster of American graffiti, she represented a vivid remnant of his formative years, a radiant, vibrant thread from an era when life still felt boundless. When he and Cindy were mere youngsters, standing on the cusp of their aspirations with only bright prospects ahead, losing her was tantamount to losing a witness to his former self, and that particular form of loss impacts one differently. It strikes silently and far more profoundly than most individuals can ever comprehend. They encountered each other as two aspiring youths in the year 1973, brought together amidst the vibrant tumult of American graffiti. Late evenings on the soundstage, the roar of vintage engines, melodies drifting through the warm air of California. Cindy possessed a luminescence that never appeared to dim. Between takes, she would recline against a parked vehicle, a denim jacket slipping from one shoulder, her laughter uninhibited and genuine, causing everyone around her to forget their troubles. She was a beacon of warmth and composure, a stabilizing influence for Ron when fame was still nascent and precarious. They were not constantly together in a daily sense, but in a way that truly mattered. Each occasion their paths converged across the decades, a familiar and gentle sense of connection would re-emerge. She was the embodiment of a chapter that only she could fully appreciate. The unbridled optimism of youth, the exhilaration of initial achievements, the innocence preceding the tightening grip of life's obligations. When the notification arrived in early 2023, Ron was in a studio corridor reviewing his notes. His phone vibrated. He answered routinely. Then everything tensed. Cindy was gone. A sudden, brief affliction, no prior indication, no final exchange, a single, swift twist of fate, and her existence ceased. For a moment he was rendered speechless. The lights seemed excessively bright, the atmosphere too rarefied, the voices of the crew fading into a low drone. All he could perceive was her laughter, clear, resonant, alive. The very same laughter that once reverberated through the illuminated nights on the set of American Graffiti. He recalled her nudging him and remarking, "Take it easy, kid. We're creating legacies, not errors." Her kindness, her warmth. The manner in which she made individuals feel acknowledged in a city that rarely noticed gentle spirits. He remembered observing her perform at the age of 19 and thinking, "She is exceptional. The world will someday mourn her absence." And now that day had arrived, abrupt and unforgiving. No opportunity to steady his heart, no chance to express gratitude. No opportunity to bid farewell. He had not contacted her in months. He had never conveyed the significance of her presence when he was still finding his equilibrium. He had never communicated how her warmth anchored him amidst the whirlwind of early recognition. Some sorrows sting, some sorrows excavate. Cindy's departure excavated directly through him, leaving a void shaped precisely like the young woman who once illuminated those long California evenings. Yet, in the anguish of her absence, something tender persisted. Cindy had bestowed upon Ron happiness during a time when joy was effortless, when nights on set blended into dawns filled with mirth, when ambition was a vibrant flame rather than a burden. Her radiance did not perish with her. It lingered in every memory he held, in every narrative he still recounted about those nascent days, in the warmth that spanned 50 years of lives lived separately, yet bound by a common genesis. Standing alone after her passing, Ron grasped a truth he had never articulated previously. The individuals we encounter in our youth do not vanish. They imprint themselves upon the more sensitive aspects of our being, shaping who we become long before we fully comprehend their influence. And as he contemplated her, the denim jackets, the neon-lit nights, the humming engines, the laughter, drifting into the warm California darkness, Ron felt a profound realization gently settle into the stillness. Certain friendships do not dim with the passage of time. They merely await, glowing softly in the hidden chambers of the heart, evidence that even transient episodes can leave an indelible mark that endures a lifetime. Now, at 71 years of age, Ron Howard occupies a stage of life that many aspire to, but few attain. A phase characterized not by clamor, but by serene accomplishment. Following decades of turbulence, transformation, and an industry that frequently shows no mercy, Ron's accumulated worth has reached nearly $200 million. The figure is remarkable, but the journey that underlies it is truly astonishing. His affluence is derived from Imagine Entertainment assets, directorial remuneration, decades of broadcast earnings, long-term investments, and a real estate collection meticulously assembled over half a century. His 32-acre estate in Greenwich remains the crown jewel, a 17,000-square-foot residence nestled amidst mature trees, a private body of water mirroring the heavens, a viewing room designed like an intimate theatre, a recording studio discreetly situated, and gardens conceived as if nature itself had collaborated with an artist. In Los Angeles, he maintains a contemporary minimalist dwelling, bathed in warm light, featuring clean lines and adorned with mementos from the sets that shaped him. And for numerous years, his New York City apartment captivated visitors with its glass walls framing the metropolis like a living panorama. These are not mere possessions, they are testaments. Evidence of a man who ascended from cramped quarters and pressing financial worries to the composed dignity of a life achieved with diligence and humility, step by measured step. Even his conveyances reflect this ethos. A cherished, restored Volkswagen Beetle he has owned since his youth, a small assortment of vintage open-top vehicles from the 1960s and 70s, a modest Fiat 500e he utilizes for local transport, and a pair of Ferraris, a Ferrari FF, and a performance variant, which he regards less as symbols of extravagance and more as marvels of engineering artistry. He possesses no private aircraft, no yacht, merely a few exquisite machines retained out of genuine appreciation for their craftsmanship, not for ostentation. However, Ron will readily affirm that his true riches are not quantified in monetary sums, horsepower, or square footage. They are measured in the life rebuilt after enduring all the adversities. Ron and Cheryl, after more than 50 years of matrimony, now move through their days with the steadfastness of individuals who have weathered all that was intended to break them. Their 4 offspring remain the most luminous aspects of their household. Bryce Dallas Howard, born in 1981, is now both a celebrated performer and an ambitious director. The twins Paige and Jocelyn, born in 1985, have blossomed into women of integrity. Paige continues in acting while Jocelyn has chosen a more private existence away from the public eye. And Reed, the youngest, born in 1987, remains the grounding force of the family. Visits are frequent, marked by lengthy dinners where narratives flow effortlessly. Laughter emanates from room to room. And Ron finds himself quietly observing, capturing mental images of the life he almost missed during the years Hollywood fully consumed him. And despite his considerable success, he has generously donated millions. Scholarships for aspiring artists, funding for children's medical facilities, support for veteran initiatives, grants for young filmmakers from disadvantaged backgrounds. He never publicizes these acts of generosity. He gives as his parents instilled in him, with kindness and discretion, never anticipating accolades. He also continues to create, but now on his own terms. No more hurried pace, no more relentless pursuit. He directs when a narrative deeply resonates with him and steps back when his spirit seeks tranquility. His days are filled with simple routines, once elusive due to fame. Morning strolls with Cheryl. Hours devoted to reading scripts without the pressure of impending deadlines. Weekends spent surrounded by his grandchildren, who clamber into his lap with a childlike curiosity that melts him each time. The loss of his mother, Jane, due to cardiac complications, and his father, Rance, following a prolonged decline from heart failure, taught him to value life in its individual moments rather than its grand milestones. Guiding Clint back from the precipice revealed to him that survival is a quiet marvel. And the departure of Cindy Williams in the year 2023 reminded him that memories are not merely reverberations of the past, they are essential anchors. His existence today is gentler, more serene, yet more profoundly enriched than any moment of his fame. He now comprehends that the ultimate luxury is not material wealth or public adulation, it is peace. The tranquility that comes from knowing you have lived with integrity, loved with depth, given with generosity, and persevered each time the world sought to overwhelm you. And so, as Ron Howard navigates this current phase of his life, more grounded, more tender, wiser, his narrative offers us more than admiration, it provides us with clarity. That eminence is forged not from flawlessness, but from resilience. That material wealth is hollow without emotional richness, that success holds little value unless it is shared around a table laden with cherished faces, and that every trial we overcome becomes a beacon for someone still seeking their path through darkness. Thank you for joining us for this segment. And if Ron's life journey has resonated with you, we warmly invite you to express your appreciation by liking the video, leaving a comment, and sharing your perspectives. May you, our esteemed viewers, traverse your days with robust health, profound peace, enduring happiness, and a life rich in all the ways that truly matter. And from all of us at Golden American Stars, we extend our sincerest wishes for your journey to be filled with grace, boundless love, and an unwavering inner light.